Good morning and welcome to the live Q&A here in the Manager Critic group on Facebook. My second attempt, I got kicked off just a minute ago, and we're on part 7 of how to improve listening skills. So I'm going to talk about today about the strength and solution detective listening. So what is it? What's the listening that I, Cheryl, do that's different to everybody else? And what is it that I want to encourage you to do? So let's have a really quick recap of the others. We're on part 7 now. So for me as a strength and solution detective, what I'm doing is I'm listening to people to find out what kind of listening they need. What do they need to hear from themselves or others in order to have clarity of what they want and the confidence to make it happen? And over years and years of modeling what works, what kind of listening do people need, what kind of questions do people work for people, what kind of feedback works. My purpose and intention is for them to believe in themselves more, to recognize who they are, recognize what works for them. And so I do this through a series of processes. So the first thing I do is I have a conversation with somebody and I'm listening to them to find out what's happening in their world. And when I'm listening to them, this is the clarity process, I'm asking questions and I'm listening to their language. And from their language, depending what they're talking about or how they're talking about it, I am evaluating, I'm calibrating. Are they talking about, is there attention on the A part? Is it all about what's not working in the past? And my experience says if I try and move them out of that really quickly, I have to honor that space with them. I have to listen. So I might do a bit of counseling listening. So I'm listening to what's not working, what hasn't worked in the past tense. So finding out what's happening for them in their world right now. Then I'm going to ask them a coaching question. I'm going to say, so given that this is what's happening for you now, what would you like to have happen instead? And then I'd start asking them pure coaching questions, just asking them what they want to have happen. And then my job is to actually find out, so what's the gap? What's happening in between, or what needs to happen for you to get from where you are now to where you want to be? And that is when it's about modeling out with clean language. It's about people, because often we have a logical process, like, this is it. First thing I need to do is this. But when we're saying things like, I feel like I'm holding myself back, or we're not, there's nothing physically holding us back. That's our emotions. It's our beliefs, our thoughts, our fears, and they're less tangible to actually find language to even explain it to ourselves, let alone to other people. And that's when clean language for me comes into its own. And that's when I start helping people to understand what it is that's happening for them right now. So I might ask a question. So when it's like that, that's like what? And then I'll ask them again, what would you like to have happen? But when we've got a metaphor, so I'm pretty confident Karen won't mind, who in the Do Delegate or Ditch mastermind that we ran through October, November and January, she was saying that overwhelm for her was like spaghetti in her head. And when it's all like the spaghetti's raw, it's straight and it's in order and it's got lines. And so by having that metaphor, she can start to notice if her spaghetti is starting to get a bit bendy before it gets all tangled up. And as soon as she knows her head's in spaghetti, she now has a strategy to get out of it. So as a strength and solution detective, my job is to look at where is their attention right now, what language are they using, and find out whether or not just simply listening to the download will be enough. And then they'll go, oh yeah, I feel better now. We're asking them coaching questions about what they want to have happen, where they are now, where they want to be, and looking at the process, the simple process of step by step, this is what I need to do, and then having that will be enough. Or is it about the clean language stuff? Is it about really understanding the emotional stuff that's stopping them? It's not about, some people really avoid emotional stuff, but we all have feelings, we're human. So we have fear, anger. So you may not be someone that's very teary. You might be someone who's quite irritable or, aggressive. Our emotions show up. But if we can't articulate them to ourselves, so we can't find the language to describe them to ourselves and make sense of them to ourselves, we can't manage ourselves. So that's the first part of being a strength and solution detective. That's the curiosity, asking questions. It's listening to the language, and it's listening to find out where people's attention is. But what I discovered over time, which is the reflection part, is that as human beings, we are having everything reflected back to us all of the time. So if you're in a group, other people behaving, and you'll either be inspired by them or jealous or envious of them, and you might start comparing yourself to them. So everything around you is being reflected back, and your brain is absorbing that information. And so for some people, simply using clean language or coaching questions or simply listening to the download was enough for them to filter everything they'd learned and for them to start to process and make sense of it. But for other people, simply the reflection was enough. Other people, that where I talk about intention, I talk in the book about the drama triangle. For other people, there was such an overwhelm. There was so much information to process that they got themselves into drama. So they started talking about things like, you know, I never get it right, I'm always left behind, I can't charge as much as other people, I don't have enough time in it. So everything was about what wasn't working. And they were in a lot of drama. And I found that for those people, it didn't matter. Sometimes I would always start with listening, download listening, just let them get it off their chest, let them talk about it. I'd ask them what they'd like to have happen. I would do clean language facilitation. But there was this real lock where they would feel like it's just them. And just working one-to-one with people, they didn't get that it wasn't just them. And I remember having conversations with people and saying to them, look, they say, you know, they would ask the question, is it just me? And I'd say, no, because I wouldn't have a successful business if it was just you. And I wouldn't have needed this help. I wouldn't have gone on this journey to find these answers, because I can relate to what you're saying. I remember feeling like that. Maybe for me, it might have been, could be yesterday, or it could have been 5 years ago, depends what the thing they're talking about. But I can remember going through that process myself. So I was reassuring my clients. And so there was a part, and this is where the mentoring kind of listening comes in, where I needed to be able to give them evidence-based feedback that they weren't on their own. And the ironic thing is, that is when people benefit from coming into group coaching, which is what I do as a strength and solution detective, is I work one-to-one and I do group coaching, mentoring with people, because something magical happens when you can show up in a group and be your weird and wacky self. You know, talk about what's not working, talk about what is working, talk about spaghetti in your hair. Somebody has a beautiful metaphor about jumping into the sea of life and wanting just to embrace and enjoy life. So when we can talk about worlds, our inner world, without fear of being judged by a group of people, that is when real magic for me started to happen. And it takes huge amounts of courage. So I've been talking about and been working on what I think the sort of change stands for, is that for us to change anything in life, we have to have the courage to speak honestly. So the H for change would be honestly, really talk honestly to ourselves first of all. And that's when we work with a coach or a mentor. So we've got somebody that was going to reflect ourselves back, sounding board's going to come back to us, and we can start to be truly honest with ourselves. But when the real magic happens, and this is where I was found as a strength and solution detective, that working just one-to-one with my clients, it never took them to the next level. It never gave them those insights that they would get if they could have the courage to be truly honest in a group environment. And that's where I really work with clients now. So I start with wherever they are. Some people prefer to work in a group. I remember one client coming to and she'll remember this, she turned up to here for a clarity and confidence retreat. And the retreats are supposed to be a group environment. So we have about 5 people here in my home all day on a Thursday or Friday once a month. And she arrived, and a number of people had cancelled for various different reasons. It ended up being just her. Now, in my head, I'm thinking she's really lucky because she's paid £150 to be with me for the day. And I charge £1,200 if I do a VIP day with somebody, mainly because it's not just that day they have with me. It's because I do some work beforehand. We set some exercises and some homework to do. So we have a one-to-one. We do the VIP day, and then we have another one-to-one afterwards. So it's not just for that day. But I'm thinking, oh, she's really lucky because she gets me for £150 for the whole day. It turns out that she wasn't feeling quite so lucky, because she really wanted a group environment, because for her, and these were her words, she said, I can hide a little bit in the group, because being more introverted, she was able to listen to what other people were saying, and she didn't have to communicate so much. So I found that with my clients, when I'm really listening to them as a strength and solution detective, I'm listening to their intention, but I'm also listening to how they learn, how they process. And some people, for me, I'm an external processor. I talk a lot, and I need to get a lot of words out in order to get clarity. So I'm often more effective if I work one-to-one with somebody, so they can really slowly hone me down. But what I've learned is that when I'm in a group, learning to be able to process internally and have less time to talk is really beneficial for my development. So I work with other people that are very introverted, and actually you might have partners or friends or family like this where you ask them what they like and they go, I don't know. It's like trying to get words out of their head and out of their mouth. It's like you're pulling their teeth out or their nails out. It's really painful for them to think that hard. And that's because they don't process, they don't make sense of the world by talking it out. So just because that everyone says it's good to talk, it's not so much the process of talking that's good. It's about the process of making sense of your thoughts. And introverted people and internal processors are much more adept, I think is the right word actually, much more able to process their thoughts inside. So I have coached people in complete silence. I have asked them questions. They have drawn something down. I have one young girl who I coached who wrote her thing on a piece of paper. It was a mums and 2 daughters, and she folded it over, and we didn't know what she was working on. And because of the way we use space in the work, I would say to them, so find a space and do something else about that. And I just said to her, when you know you've got more information and you know something different, just give me a nod. I had another client I was working with who was a touring singer, and she was on larynx rest when we had one of our coaching sessions booked, so she couldn't speak. So I just said to her, so once you've got some insights, if you can just give me a nod. Sometimes you can tell because they stop going from sort of thinking about it, but they didn't say anything. But we did it through space. So she walked around the space and found something else and knew something else about the original thing she wanted. And I was just pointing to her picture. She'd drawn what she wanted on a piece of paper. And I say, so in relation to that, what do you know here? So I didn't have to hear anything she was saying in order for her to get clarity. And this is what strength solution detective listening is all about. It's about really listening to the person and finding out what works for them. So not everybody is comfortable talking to find their answers, but most of us do need time to think. Now, I talk to think, so when I'm trying to find answers, I will talk it out. And I've learned over the years that if I learn to be quiet with my thoughts, I hear different things. So the T in Clarity Choice is about trusting your process. And for me, I'm working with my clients to help them understand, how do they learn? When they're learning on their own independently, that learning's like what? You know, what kind of questions they ask themselves? Where are the questions coming from? Are they coming from inside their own head, or are they coming from somebody outside? When they are listening, what kind of listening are they doing? What works for them? When they're getting feedback, what kind of feedback is that? So I'm really helping them to understand, what do they need to learn at their best as an individual independently, and what do they need to learn at best in a group? Because we need the combination of both ways. It doesn't matter whether we're introverted, internal processors, external processors, whether we talk to think or we think to talk. We require, if we sit on our own in a dark room, the stimuli is not there to help get clarity. And it's the stuff that goes on around us that creates stimuli and helps us to find the solution. So I had a client recently that I was working with, that we were working one-to-one, and she would end up in a bind again. And what it is she's much more of an internal processor, and she benefits much more from listening to what other people have done and then coming up with a solution. So she's really good at project managing other people, but it isn't the same when you're trying to project manage yourself, because you can't see and hear yourself from the same way unless you have a recording of you or a video of you, in which case you will probably be able to turn on those skills that you have that when you're really good at helping other people. So one of the things about strength solution detective listening is I'm always listening to what's happening for that person. I'm calibrating what kind of questions work for that person right now. I'm looking to help them trust their own unique process. I'm not trying to fit them into my process. I'm trying to understand, how do they do them? And the more I reflect them back to them, the more they get to know them. But I'm also calibrating, how do I need to be for them to show up as the best version of them today with me right now? And what I found is that by helping them understand the story that they're telling themselves, so I would be able to find out, so when you hear and see this, this is how you make sense of it, this is the impact on you, and this is what you'd like to have happen. And I found that by just listening, huge amounts of things can happen. And sometimes, as human beings, we do need someone outside of us to give us evidence-based feedback that we matter. And that is, I take people through this process of listening to them to find out what sort of language are they using, where is their attention, what is being reflected back to them, are they hearing from other people how great they are and how they're adding value, or are they just hearing what they're doing wrong? I'm listening to find out whether they're in the drama triangle and looking to ways to help them get out of that, so they don't keep feeling like the victim, or perhaps they're not blaming other people, that they're owning their own life, that they know they can do something about it. And by helping them trust their own process, helping them to get to know themselves better, the more they know themselves, they recognize how they add value. And then that's when the why is that they know that they matter, so you know that you matter. And then you'll know that the story you've got to tell has value and it makes a difference to other people. And I found that pure listening works for, I reckon, 97% of the time. All I need to do is listen back and keep giving them evidence. But some people really did need to hear some positive feedback. And that's when I will switch from being a coach, a mentor, listener, and I will look the person in the eye and I will tell them that they matter. And I want you to think about that. When was the last time someone looked at you and actually said, you're of value, you matter, you make a difference? And when they did say that to you, were you able to truly receive it? Or did your critic go, yeah, but only when I do this, or whatever that? And I say that because I just ran the 21-day Manager Critic program, and I attended it as a delegate as well. And one of the emails that I send out to the delegates is, look in the mirror today and say to yourself that you're of value and you matter. And my critic went, yeah, but you do keep forgetting to do X, Y, and Z. All right. But the point behind the process is I caught myself saying that. So then I have a choice. I go, okay, so when I don't do that very well, what would I like to have happen? And I can start the process again. And that'd be another criticism that I can undo of myself. Because if I don't stop criticizing myself, it's almost impossible to stop criticizing other people. And if we don't stop criticizing each other, how are we going to work, learn, and live in harmony? How are we going to learn about ourselves? How are we going to grow if every time we open our mouth, we fear that we're getting it wrong or someone's going to judge us? We have to be able to communicate how we're thinking and feeling right now. And even if sometimes those thoughts we're having are a bit ugly or a bit messy or a bit confused or a bit muddled, like a big pile of wet, soggy spaghetti, we have to be able to have that space to be heard and understood so that we can hear and understand ourselves, and then we can communicate with clarity and confidence to other people. So I don't have anybody live today, so thank you very much for those who I know are going to watch the video back later. What I'd like to know from you now is, we've been doing this series for the last 7 weeks since we came back in the new year. I've got one more video to do next Friday, which is the 2nd of March. And I want to, then I'm going to wrap up. I'll be taking a break from live video feeds, and my team will be regurgitating, repurposing, sending out some videos that we've used from YouTube. So we'll be replaying some of these videos again. And what I'd like to hear from you guys is, we've been focusing on listening skills. My intention when I come back in April is to start looking at, how do we ask good questions? And these are the kind of questions that we're always asking as coaches. How do I ask a good question? How do I listen at my best? So I'd really like to hear from you today. What's the one thing that you've taken from this video today? And what's the one thing you'll do different every single day for the next 7 days? I'd love to hear what you're going to do differently. It helps me to know that the videos are coming across, making sense and of value to you. And I'd also, if you can spare me the time, let me know what else you'd like to have on these videos. Are you interested in finding out more about questioning technique? If I don't get any feedback whatsoever here, then I'll go away on my holidays in March. I'll come up with a new idea probably and come back with something different. So I need to know, we've been talking about lots of different kinds of listening. Are you up and ready for committing to learning how to ask good questions through April and May? Thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Bye.